Welcome back to Empowerment Radio. Dare to love again, making love work again. And I'm here with the expert for all of those challenges that we have been experiencing in our love life, Gary Salyer, who wrote the book Dare to Love Again. I hope Safe to Love Again. Sorry,
Save to love. Good.
my brain sometimes. Well, the thing about Gary is that actually Danielle and I did have sessions with Gary, and so I can say out of my own experience, they are fantastic, and you should really try to, if you feel, well, our relationship doesn't even have to have a big problem. Our relationship didn't really have a big problem. It was just time for an upgrade. And that upgrade is certainly good to have some help with, someone who gives you some different insights and some tools to work on it. Gary is the man for that. So, Gary, how can people find you?
Well, they can find me at my website, GarySalyer.com.
How do you spell it?
Salyer, Gary, GarySalyer.com, or just write me at Dr. Gary, DRGARY, at GarySalyer.com. Either way, you'll get to me.
And check out the book. It's really wonderfully written, and it's, there are books out there that are kind of teaser books, and so they kind of want you to do the work with the author later on. But Gary's book is just full also of tremendous tools and insights that can right away already make a difference. And so I also highly recommend the book. Now, Gary, before the break, we talked about how individual work is really important. And for that, there is this whole talk about attachment and attachment theory, which is a core element of your book. Just briefly talk about these different attachment styles and maybe help people to understand how they can identify theirs and the attachment style of their partner.
Okay. So attachment theory, it's a science about 75 years old. And it's just the science of how your brain gets wired from early experience, sometimes later experience, to love and be loved. So it's the science of how you're loved to be loved. And I call it the rules of love. I rewrite the rules of love in people's brain. And there are rules, so to speak. And attachment theory found out that it started in the orphanages after World War II, when they noticed that children who had lost both parents, they were in orphanage, and they were clothed and fed, and they were given all of the things that you need, they were still dying. And John Bowlby, a British psychiatrist, said they're dying for lack of a bond, lack of attachment. He wanted to call it love theory, but he didn't think it would sound scientific enough. So he called it attachment. And what they found out, they had this famous experiment called the strange situation, where a baby 12 to 18 months old, actually 10 to 18 months old, they would separate them from their mother for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, watch them how they played with the toys, and then how they came back, how they reacted when the mom came back as well. And what they found is, based on how the child reacted at the reunion, that there were actually 4 styles of babies. The one is disorganized, which is more clinical, but there were 3 styles, and you could track these styles for the rest of their life. The one with the secure baby, where that baby, was pretty comfortable, safe, depending and being dependent on their mother, right? And they grew up and they felt like, yeah, mom's gone, I don't like that, but they just kind of knew inside, yeah, mom's coming back. They were safe and secure. They grew up to be the partners who pick secure partners, and they are comfortable depending and being dependent on. But there were also the anxious babies. There were some babies that, when mom went away, they were inconsolable. Like, how dare you leave me again? Right? And so they grew up to be the sort of people that say, why didn't you text me back? It took you a whole 10 minutes. Where were you last night? Do you still love me? And their worst fear is, when does love go away? And they're trying to lock it down because they got intermittent. Love was there, not there. Love there, not there. Some part says, I'm going to fight to lock this thing down. Then there were the avoidant babies. Those avoidant babies, they really never got much of a bond in the first place. They learned, man, I better be on my own. So they become, and they grow up to be dismissive of emotions, not the committing time. If they do get in a relationship and they commit, it's like they're on Pluto. Okay. So these babies learned the worst fear was depending or being depended on. They have a flight response. So the three styles that, most people with what I call middle class craziness have, is you're secure, you're anxious, or avoidant. And the thing that it needs to be said is that if you feel like, oh my God, I'm anxious or avoidant, nobody's wrong. Your brain took the best deal available. At some point in time, that was the best deal. So, we're not making that part of your brain wrong. We're just saying it could use a little update.
Right.
Yes.
And can you switch from avoidant to secure or from anxious to secure?
Yes, you can. You absolutely can. It's interesting. A few years ago, I worked with a therapist who had heard me speak on stage. And at the fifth session, she had 30 years in the field. She said to me, "My God, you've changed my attachment style. I was told you couldn't do this."
Hmm.
And before I wrote my book, the big thing in the field was, you know, how do you get back to secure if you've been anxious or avoidant? Uh, and just giving a label, anxious, avoidant, secure, that in $5 might get you something at Starbucks. And a label doesn't heal, it doesn't restore. I can still remember being a few years ago at a party in Marin, and it was a community, a growth community, and someone invited me, about 40 people, and 20 of them had read the book Attached, the classic book back in 2008 that introduced it. And it's really good at giving labels and describing, but not much of a road back. And I can still remember one man saying, "I stopped reading the book halfway through." I go, "Why?" He said, "Because," he says, "I realized I was avoidant, and I had this invisible sign above my head that said screwed. And there was no hope to ever
Hmm.
change that." And that was when I said, "I'm writing my book."
Well, I'm
Because
glad you
there,
did.
there is a road back, and it's these four feelings. If we are given these four feelings I talk about, welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered as a little child, those become templates, they become rights, and our brain begins to pick people who give them back. And then that creates, we trust love. And then we pick people that are trustworthy based on that being our GPS. The bug in the program is if you were given unwelcomed or unworthy or uncherished or disempowered, your brain will use those reference feelings too. And then you go pick someone that makes you feel disempowered or unworthy. And then you don't trust love so much. So the key is to restore these four feelings that are the central post of all love. If you can feel welcome and worthy and cherished and empowered again, you won't find a taker. You won't find someone who dominates you because you're using different feelings. If you can change those four core feelings, you can change an attachment style.
But it certainly needs to also change how you relate to yourself,
Yes.
because I'm sure an anxious person, as I know from my own practice, that is a person usually who also doesn't feel worthy of love, very often feels, not good enough. And an avoider can feel the same way. It's just like they are more scared of getting this kind of connection and rejection, so they are avoiding it right away. So would you say that a secure, attached person has more, on average, sense of self-love than an anxious or avoidant?
Yes, they do. And the funny thing in my work, I almost never tell someone to go love themselves because what I do is, if you can restore that feeling, the secure person was welcome with joy and they automatically give welcomed, right? The secure person feels worthy. So they know they can reach out for their needs. And because they feel worthy, they give it right back. They give back cherished, they give back empowered. The best definition I heard of secure was a woman that had been married 55 years. And she was on my stage and her husband. And I asked her, "What's your 1 minute soundbite for what makes a 55-year marriage tick?" She goes, "Oh, that's easy. I take no BS. I give no BS." And she wouldn't think of giving it, and she wouldn't think of
Hmm.
taking. I know because she was an energy worker, and I was late for one of her appointments, and I was an hour late because Siri drove me the wrong way. And I get in, and we're good friends. She goes, "Okay, Mr. Hotshot, speak across the country. My time is just as valuable as yours."
Good for her. Good boundaries.
And I thought, she's living it.
Well, one thing that I want to talk with you after the break is the loneliness people are feeling, especially right now. And I think the loneliness has a lot to do also with this not only yearning for love, but the disconnection from oneself and just feeling like I'm not enough. My company is kind of boring. I need someone else. And so what I want to ask you after the break is, what are good strategies to start putting yourself out there again? So many people say, I don't want to do the Zoom thing and online, and I don't really know what to do. And do you have any suggestions on how people can, especially those that do feel anxious and avoidant, how can they start during these more difficult times where an organic way of connecting pretty much, is limited or doesn't exist? What can people do to still find love? So stay tuned, we'll be right back. Hi, Dr. Friedemann here. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more about fear and anxiety, here you'll find guided meditations, webinars, and interviews with some of the most renowned experts in the field of empowerment. Delve into the over 230 videos and more to come every week.